Hello and welcome to Walsall United WFC. Hello and welcome to Walsall United with me, John Foster, MUFC. Special show tonight. Really looking forward to it. But before we make the start and do all the introductions, just give us a couple of minutes just to watch this very special video.
Appreciation for Manchester United. Last to receive her medal is the captain, Captain Wilson, who will now take the trophy. Please, everyone, show your appreciation for the Barclays Acquire Academy champions,
I don't know who was more hyper. Natalie thinks it might have been Poppy, and probably agree. That was real good to see. And Rich, first of all, thanks for joining us. How are you doing, Rich? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Nat messaged me saying she was quiet at Academy Games before the game, and that quickly went out of the window.
Yeah, the Birmingham fans are up for it, you know. We had to let them know.
Only when they started to sing over you, though, Nat, because I think you got us going first. A few of us were standing up and singing, but they started to try and sing over us. Didn't really work. Over you more than anyone. But yeah, they were up for it, and they did give a good atmosphere. Obviously, I'm not used to hearing what a Devs games are like, but it seemed like a lot of the Birmingham fans that were there were either players or coaches or the ones that were sitting directly to the right of us. But it was really loud, and it was a real good game. But Nat, just bring you in, how important to you was that event? Because obviously you followed them not only all season, but you've seen their journey, since 2019ish.
Yeah, 2018 actually, when it was a devs team, an actual devs team. I didn't know what devs meant. I just was like, okay, devs. But apparently that means development team. That means a hybrid between sort of reserves and first team. And I think that's what it was in the first year, because we weren't in the under 21 league. So there wasn't any sort of age cap ish. We didn't play in any leagues. Tom Fitton, actually of FC United, who's been on this show a couple of times, took it, who Rich knows as well. He was at Sheffield United, took the development team. It sort of sprung together because I think our first team was sort of sprung together. And, you know, we hear a lot of people, Casey talks about it's had 6 weeks to get a team, but do you think she had 6 weeks to get a team? How quickly did they probably just chuck that devs team together, try and sort of ask a lot of players to stay on because there was going to be, you know, it's going to be done properly. Obviously, it was done properly, and I don't know if Rich remembers, but it was Charlotte Healy took over. We heard about it. One of the very first games I went to was actually at Sheffield United's training ground. It was Sheffield United reserves or devs, or I don't know what Rich will know better what they call them, versus our under-21s, and Maz played that day, and I think Poppy even played, but there was Rebecca played. It was 2-2 in the end that I remember. But yeah, I think Neve was even part of it. Maybe, yeah, I think she was. Isabel Reedford, who's still there. So there's girls that have been there for a long time. And they've really developed. Kana was there at the start, whether she played the game that I'm talking about. I can't remember. But, you know, this team's been going along for a long time. Charlotte even talked about, you know, a lot of disruption, which there was. We were due to play in the semi-final of a plate, which is, as soon as you get knocked out of that cup, you go into the plate. And so we that year of COVID, 2020, we were in the semi-finals versus Liverpool. And then obviously it all just shut down. One of the last games I went to before COVID shut us all down was a development game versus Man City, and Tara Bourne scored from the halfway line, and Maz scored, and we won 2-1. And, you know, we didn't see what was around the corner really, but you could see them all growing, or what it was going to be. And then obviously sort of the start of it, when lockdown 1 was finished, it all started again, and we could sort of go to games. And I remember seeing them versus Huddersfield, and I remember seeing Kana coming back from lockdown looking very strong, and Carrie Jones, and we all know about her. And then obviously lockdown 2 happened again. Tara and Carrie went and trained up. Tara's gone to Sheffield. Carrie's playing a lot. They've both them two have ended up getting professional contracts, which they deserve. And, you know, now this is the first proper season, full season that they've had. But if you talk about like Maz, Rebecca, Neve, Kana, even though the seasons have been disrupted through COVID, the development from that first year to now is amazing. Is amazing. And, you know, I told Mark yesterday, Mark Skinner, he came and watched. There's a few players there ready, and I think they are. He can say what he wants. He can say no, they're not, or whatever. But for me, I've watched them longer than him, so I know that they're ready. I know they'll do it. Just give them a chance. We've seen Kana play up. We've seen Rebecca play up. We've seen Maz play up in Norway all them years ago. And from where she is then to now, she's even different. So I'd like to see it. I'd like to see some of them, even if it's just in and around on the bench. You know, there's a lot of things I can say about, you know, look at that Leicester game, people that are coming on. It should be people like, you know, Neve, Rebecca coming on as well. Especially if you're winning 4-5-0, doesn't matter. Bring them on 10 minutes. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to concede you 5 goals, are they? So let's see what happens.
Yeah, Nat, just to stick with you just very quickly, one last thing. There was 19 points difference in the league tables. Just before we actually get into the comparison between the two, but it just shows how much of a great season they have in the league as well. So obviously they've won this cup, but you know, you've seen them win massive amounts, you know, like 10-0 pretty much. You see goals going in every week. Are they going to go on and win that league?
They're going to go on. 100% they're going to win the league. And let me just say as well, even though the season has been disrupted, a lot of media, they talk about City being the best and Arsenal and Chelsea. And just before the league was ended, Chelsea were unbeaten. Chelsea were the best. But we've come through and we've surpassed them. Our development, we're better now. Aston Villa last year, they were really good. I mean, we used to play Aston Villa and they would always beat us. And there's that thing. That's what annoys me about the media. When it's City, when it's Aston Villa, when it's Arsenal, Oh, everyone talks about it when Man United win 4-1. I'm waiting. Yeah, I'm waiting for the prizes, mate, for these girls, because people like Poppy, Rebecca, even Kayla Barry coming on 16, Megan Schofield 16, Alicia Hearn, who won Player of the Match. I think she's 16 or 17. Talk about these people. Jess Simpson, 17, 16. So everyone's like, oh, well, your girls are 20 and this and that. No. One maybe is 20, maybe Chloe's 20. But if I look at Polly Watson, 17, for me, they sit there and say City is the best academy. City ain't even close. City can't even touch our boots, mate. Yeah, in terms of who's the best academy. I think Arsenal are a great academy, yeah. I think Chelsea are up there, but they've sort of dropped off. But don't ever put City's academy next to mine. City take my players. We took the as soon as City left, as soon as we got our academy, all the players come back to Man United. So there ain't no comparison. Yeah, they've got nice fancy training, but it ain't nothing compared to Man United and the Charlotte there, what she's doing in her team and the way that team plays like a team. And Mark talks about aggression and all this, and Man United, and playing and pushing. Poppy epitomises everything that is Man United for me, no doubt about it.
Yeah, we'll get onto these players as well, Nat. Rich, just a quick one before we start putting some comments on screen. Natalie was on about her early memories. What was your first memories and early memories of the Man United academy team?
Like Nat said, probably the couple of times that we played against them. I haven't always watched. I don't really go and watch friendlies all that often. I've obviously heard of various players. I have to say there was one or two last night that I actually wasn't that aware of. Obviously, Rebecca May's been around a little bit of time now. Maz obviously played in the Championship last season, played against us. She actually scored against us as well when she was at Blackburn. Obviously, Kana, everybody knows, rightly or wrongly, because of her surname. That last night was probably the first time I've watched them live for 90 minutes in a real competitive, match, like a cup final. So it was interesting. Like, obviously we were talking off air before, you don't really get to see a lot of WSL academy football. And that's kind of part of the reason why I went, to sort of see what it was like. And it was probably what I expected in a way, in terms of how the game kind of was played and how it panned out and where these players are at. And I think you could tell who were the slightly older ones and who were the slightly younger ones. But it was a good game. Like, it was enjoyable. And again, said to you off air, like, it became a little bit of like a basketball match in the second half. It was very end to end, because there isn't quite that sort of tactical knowledge yet when you're 16, 17, but it actually made for a really enjoyable game. So yeah, it was good. Enjoyed it.
Rich, you did mention there about the academy games not being available to watch anywhere. Where do you stand on this? Would you like to see more of these games on the FA Player or YouTube or something like that? Because it would be nice to kind of still be able to watch them, even if you can't actually get to the games or whatever. It's going to be very hard, because we've only just got like WSL games onto the FA Player and Championship games onto the FA Player. These development teams maybe too early?
Yeah, I think it's baby steps. I think the Academy Cup final being on was good. That was a positive step, and I think that should happen annually. It's difficult. Like, we kind of have the same issue at Chef. Like, we had the Youth Cup run this year when we got to the semi-finals, and it's slightly different because they're slightly different ages, but you've got players that are 16, and in terms of coverage and what you put out there becomes issues around even like safeguarding and things like that when it's young. And the other thing you have is you don't want to put too much on them, like they're kids. Do you know what I mean? In terms of putting them out there on social media, and it's kind of, I'm only speaking from a Sheffield United point of view here. I can't speak for any other club or the FA, but you're kind of protecting them from it a little bit. Whether that, I don't know, maybe it's just there's not quite a demand for it across the board, or it's just not grown to that level yet. I think the Academy final being on the FA Player is a good start, and it was nice actually to see so many people there last night, whether that was friends, family, players, supporters. You know, it was actually, I mean, it's only quite a small stand at St George's Park, but it was full. You know, whether again that was the managers from both teams, the coaches, the fans, a couple of media, saw some agents there as well. So it was good. It's a positive start, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, fans love seeing their young players. So, you know, there's a balance because the clubs want to protect them, which is completely understandable, but the fans want to see more of them. So I think it's a good start, at least.
Yeah.
What I just want to touch on is just that I get it, protect them. I get it, you know, safeguarding, all that. I get it. But what I will say is, it's not like, you know, when you see the men and you saw the main account with what, 50 billion, million, whatever, and they're tweeting out all these pictures of these boys, they're tweeting out interviews with these boys, and what, they're 17. So what's the difference? What's the difference between that and thing? Like we say, there's a lot of older players there. There are girls that are 19, 20, but there's girls that are 18 already. So really, the under 18 boys, there's younger age group than thing, but they're plastered out everywhere. They're shown on MUTV every day, you know, in comparison to, say, the 21s. So for me, I think get the girls out there more now. You know, I took a look at the coverage, even just on, say, the women account and the men account, and the way the men's were tweeting about the, you know, clipping the goals and all that kind of rubbish. But we had one or two pictures, and that's it. Not even tweeted yet about Healy's interview. You have to go into the app and find it. And, you know, they did mention about, you know, being top of the league, but no one would know that. No one would know that. Our people know that, you know. Go out there and show the coverage. I think MUTV next weekend, it's a Saturday, we're playing the City. It's at Altrincham. Go and put it on. Go and put it on. People should come down 2:00. But for me, there's nothing on. There's no men's first team. There's no women's first team. There's no 23s men. There's no 18s boys. So get, you know, for me, I think the league is on the club channels to do. So, you know, it's on, like, even if I look at the WSL Academy League, some clubs let fans in, some clubs don't. So, you know, it is that kind of thing, and that's where we're at with to be honest, the whole of women's football. It's what each club, individual club wants. Why is it on clubs? You know, I think with that kind of what happened last night, the FA just took it. Boom, this is what we're doing. You know, it's their kind of thing. It's their FA Cup. And I get what Stuart's saying there, that the Women's National League should be on before it. I totally agree. But if I come back to something that Rich says regularly, how many people would have probably watched a National League game over that Devs final? I wouldn't be surprised if more people, I mean, they've not even put highlights on, but if they did put a highlight package on as well, how many people would watch, say, that over, I don't know, you know, Birmingham or whatever, Birmingham versus Leicester. I'm not trying to slag other teams off, but we talk about with something that we talked about on here.
Yeah.
The demand is there for our team. I know that because I have people already, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, India, Indonesia, obviously up and down the country here, you know, in Europe, France, this, that, watching that game last night. So for me to sort of sit there and go, oh, no one wants to watch it, is a demand there? Yeah, there's probably not as many people watch it as, say, we'll watch a Manchester City, the first team on BBC One. Of course, you know, more people watch that. And I'm talking about women first team, but I still think the demand is there for the 23s. And I think if Man United, MUTV put it out, then they'll see as much support, and I think people have seen it now. I've seen loads of people. I've seen that Rebecca May. I've seen her name everywhere. Alicia Hearn. People want to see her now. People want to see her all the time now. I mean, we already know they want to see Kana, but they want to see the other ones as well, and that's what I'm happy about because, you know, for example, Kana, we know her. You know, her name's getting bandied about, but people want to see the other girls, and I'm so happy. And, you know, Poppy, that's all I can say, man. She's Man United through and through.
just finishing up on this subject before we start going through some of the players' performances. Stuart, it'll be interesting if the playoff final actually gets on the FA player at the end of the season. So the winner obviously gets into the championship. Would they put that on the FA player? Wolves versus Ipswich, Southampton, whoever that is. That'll be interesting. And would they get more views than the Devs final? That'll be very interesting. Yeah. We're going to talk about some of these players then. So I'm going to read out a few names. Obviously, these are the players who have played. So if you didn't watch the FA player, or if you missed it a little bit, I'm just going to read out a few names of players who have played. Some names, obviously, I'm familiar with. Natalie, I know you're familiar with the majority of them, if not all of them. But there's going to be a few names that we've probably never heard of. So obviously, we'll just go through them and just pretty much like how they all played, because you don't win 4-1 without all having a good game. So goalkeeper Middleton Patel. Nat, what's the first name that you kept on shouting out every second of the game?
Saf,
that was it, yeah. Saf. So yeah, obviously that's the goalkeeper. We had Dave Murphy, Poppy Lawson, Emma Taylor, Jess Simpson, Ella, is it Kinsett? Is that
yeah,
okay. Yeah. Chloe Williams, Rebecca May, Kyla Solsharp, Marie Edwards, and Alyssa Ahern. So I'm thinking off the top of my head there's about 4 names that I've never even... Well, I've seen them written down, but I don't know anything about them. That's pretty much as far as I've got. Rich, obviously I know that you don't really follow the Devs, but there's a few names that you would have heard of, a few that you didn't hear of. What were your thoughts with that team sheet? Obviously, I'm sure you was happy when you saw that starting 11, and there was a few names that you'd at least heard of and got excited when you saw them on the team sheet.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I said before, I think it was very transitional, particularly second half, which I think was to be expected. Like I said before, the girls at that age, 16, 17, they don't have that kind of that tactical knowledge of the game. So it became very end-to-end. United didn't just try and sit on the 2-0 lead like you might do at first team level. And Birmingham actually had quite a lot of chances, like the start of that second half. They missed 2 big chances, I think, in a minute, and Delphi Cole, who was probably their best player, hit the bar. So it was very end-to-end, and I think first and second half, it was different players that sort of impressed me. I thought first half, it was more Neve and Alicia down the right were probably the 2 best players, and then second half, it kind of swung a little bit. I thought Rebecca May came into it a bit more. Chloe Williams came into it a bit more in terms of trying to control that midfield. And I said to you off air, at 4-0, I thought it was a little bit unfair on Birmingham because they'd had quite a few chances, but United were clinical and they seemed to have a little bit more coming off the bench in terms of, like Nat said, players like Kira Barry, etc., made a difference coming on. So again, I don't know much about a lot of the players on either side, but it looked like United had that little bit more depth to come on and just make that last little bit of difference at 2-0. But yeah, it was a good game. It was enjoyable, and like I said, tactically, if you were a tactics person, which I'm not, thankfully, you probably would pick it apart a little bit more because it was quite transitional, but that actually made it quite enjoyable because, like I said, in the second half, it was a little bit like a basketball game in terms of there was a chance at either end every couple of minutes, which was entertaining at least.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on, I think I've seen Lanzel saying, and just what Rich has said about it, that wasn't United. It's hard to say, but what Charlotte is saying about it wasn't the best performance. It wasn't. First half, I was saying, I was texting someone actually who does know a bit about academy, and I was just saying to him, you see, we're nervous. I can tell we're nervous. I can see it in them. I've watched them a lot. I know what they're about. I've seen them dominate and control games. You talk about that midfield and first half, it was all down the right and that kind of thing. And, even the chances that we had, I look at Maz and I think she would put them away. And I just think it's nerves and it's her wanting to score, wanting to impress, be that kind of thing. And, I don't think that's the biggest sort of crowd I've ever played in. Exactly. And I think I said something on a Spaces, a Town News Space, just before I came on. I think he even said it on here on the Monday. The thing that Birmingham had over us is that a lot of their players have played first team or been in and around a lot more than what ours have. That's obviously because Birmingham, we know the situation with their team. You know, they've not got any depth that we've got. You know, we talked about the 2 girls being at Stourbridge, and they've obviously experienced crowd. I mean, when I went down to Stourbridge that time, you know, even the FA Cup, they've experienced competition, that kind of thing. Whereas we've sort of, apart from recommend at one time, Kana at Bridgewater, you know, Neve being in and around Chloe, it's just been on the bench. You know, it's all right playing up and training up, but then it's totally different than when you're in a stadium, and then it's totally different from sitting on the bench to actually coming on. You know, and I think they're so used to either me being there and shouting, or me and a couple of people being there and just shouting and just saying, press this, do this, and probably hearing clearly what I'm saying to actual people shouting against them and shouting for the other team. I don't think they've ever been in a situation that I can remember where people have actively been shouting for maybe a couple of times versus Villa. That's the only time, but not like that. That was, I wouldn't say it's hostile, but it was like, actually, to be honest, it probably was hostile. It's hostile for a women's game, that was, you know, because they were proper shouting, and we were shouting at each other, and, you know, they were shouting for the ref to give fouls, and we were shouting, no, it wasn't. And when we shouted for fouls, they were saying, well done. So that was hostile, you know, for women's football. That's what they've experienced, a hostile environment. And all that matters was winning it in a way. And they've got that under their belt. And sometimes, you know, I think that the first team need a bit of that, you know, need a bit of that kind of edge to win games. To, you know, we look at that Derby game and the way it just sort of all fell apart. And, you know, Rich talks about their chances, and who knows if it had gone 2-1, what would happen. But I still believe that they would have seen it out. For me, one of the best players in midfield. I love Rebecca Main. I think she's ready to step up, and I think she's got that strength, that passion, that aggression, that kind of just passing to do it. But I think I look at Polly Watson, and for me, I think she's absolutely class. And I think when she plays, then it looks a bit different for me. Obviously, I'm not the manager. I don't know what the reasons were, but I just think, especially when she came on, she started dictating and spraying balls and doing this, and I just think we look better with her in it. That's just my opinion. But who knows? Like I said, who knows the reason? But I still think all the midfielders were great. I loved when Chloe was in the middle and she won a tackle and then got up and then they tackled her back, and it's all that kind of thing. It's what we love to see. And, you know, Poppy's tackle at the end of the first half, and, you know, that's Poppy all over. And I just feel like, you know, the first team could do with a Poppy, man. Just the way that she shouts, the way she tells people what to do. And I know it's different when you're, you know, in the first team, but I just feel like there's not enough people sometimes. Mark's talking about working on that aggression and all this, both boxes or whatever he says. But you need people like that to just be strong and powerful and not get pushed off the ball and stuff. And I think, you know, Rebecca May, for me, I just would want to see her. Rebecca, Neve, and Poppy. Those are the ones that I want to see, and Maz.
You mentioned Poppy there. I agree. I know that you said in the preview that keep your eye for Poppy. She's amazing, and I agree. You know, I know that Alyssa got the player of the match, and I can see why she scored 2 goals, and she was the most impressive forward for me yesterday. But for me, as you say, Poppy was just amazing. Hardly anything was getting past her individually. Her leadership was really good, really strong, really vocal. You could see how energetic she was, not just playing football, but like vocally, and even when she was picking up a trophy, shaking it, she has so much adrenaline inside her. You can see how much it meant to her. So yeah, I was really impressed with Poppy. Just like in summary of the game, it's the same as Richard. You know, I agree. I think we was maybe like a little bit nervous at the start, but it didn't matter. We got that goal. It calmed us down. Birmingham was unlucky. They should have scored at least 1 in that second half. That would have pushed for the equaliser, but didn't put it away. And, you know, we took our chances. Natalie, you mentioned a couple of Stourbridge players. One of them did come on in the second half, got an assist. So, you know, well done to Connie Dutton there. We mentioned her in the preview. But, yeah, I think maybe 4-1. Did it flatter them? Well, I don't think 4 goals flattered us. I think they probably deserved maybe more than 1 goal based on the clear-cut chances that they had. But if you don't put them away, you know, you just don't put them away, do you? It's as simple as that. Nat, would you kind of say your player of the match was Ahern, or would you go for someone slightly different?
No, I'd still say Ahern. Ahern was my player of the match, like you say. It's about forwards, isn't it? It's a forwards game, and I love Poppy, but there was, I don't know. I've seen everyone play better. That's all I'm going to say, but not in a bad way. Obviously, they know it themselves. Charlotte said it, but yeah, I would go with Ahern. I just feel like as well the younger ones, they just like Kira, man. She just came on and just run at them straight away, and I just thought, yo, these kids, man. Megan is another one I'm really excited about, and I can tell they're excited because they're bringing her on. They're bringing her on all the time now, and I just want to say about Megan, she came on number 9 headband, and she did that little back heel to Jess, and when Jess started to get into it, bombing forward, that was a different level as well. But Megan, 15 starts, 30 odd goals. She scored 7. I know it's different, 16 football, and there's always that step up. But with a player like that, if you're scoring goals like that rate, you got to have them in the thing. You got to have them in the pipeline. Thank you, James. More people need to say it. It's not talked about enough. But yeah, I'd love to know Rich's opinion. Yeah, because he says he come because he hears people bigging them up, but. For me, one loss all season. Can't take it away from them. Like I said, I'm talking about their numbers there. Maz is, all 3 of our strikers are in the top goals, over 10 goals. Eleanor, Maz, Kana, goals and assists, 60 goals between them. It's just the next step now, isn't it? And I saw Lanzell saying something about what do we do? How do we get there? This kind of thing. And I don't know if there needs to, it's something I said on the preview, there needs to be another step, kind of, because it's like they need that extra development, whether that's before or after, whether there's 23 and they move it up to 19s. I don't know the answers, but I feel like the FA need to do more, whether that's opening up more spaces. When I say more spaces, I don't mean for Chelsea to go and buy 10 more players. I mean for your 18-year-olds, 17, 16, and they're maybe making 5 additional spots where you say under 18s you can take up them spaces and they don't count towards your squad, kind of thing. Or under 19s, you take these spaces and they don't count towards your squad. Something like that needs to be done, because how did it happen in the men's game? How are boys like, look at Rashford. He went from the 18, and I know he's good enough, but like Elanga, how are we doing it in the men's team? I don't know, because, suddenly tomorrow anyone can get up and leave as well. There needs to be kind of some kind of investment, or I don't know, just to make sure that next step's there, because the steps are there from 14, from all the way up to 16, and now we're seeing it from the 16s to the 21s, and we just need that final thing from the 21s to the first team. And I know it can happen. I know we can get through players as regularly as the men's have got through. There's no doubt in my mind that it's just missing something.
So 2 things there. Then, Rich, obviously our academy potentially being, well, the truth in the pudding there that we just won the trophy, but we've got people in the comments as well saying that it's the best academy in the country. Where do you kind of stand on that one? And also adding an extra level in there so the players don't necessarily need to go out on loan. They can just stay with the club, build up the physicality and experience at the club, and then move into the senior team.
Yeah, the academy situation is changing next season. To what extent, I'm not still massively clear on, but I know it's something we're working on at Sheffield United. Whether it's going to be proper league, I've no idea. I know the RTCs are being done away with, and there is a big academy restructure, and a lot of it will be towards making sure clubs get money as well now for young players moving on. Like ourselves, who obviously bring through a lot of young players that one day will move on. Again, to what extent that's going to look like, I don't know. What age groups it's going to be, I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll hear more about it towards the end of the season, because as far as I'm aware, it's definitely happening next season. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you win the Academy Cup and you're top of the league, you have to be classed as the best academy this season. So That is what it is. Last season it was probably Villa. And a couple of those girls went up to the first team. Some have dropped back down again. One or two have gone on loan. That's probably, like you're saying, depending on what happens next season, obviously what the academy system looks like next season, if there is a level up, if it is, maybe under 21s and they're playing against slightly older players, that might be good for some of the girls in that United team from last night, who'll obviously be a year older themselves. So depending on how it looks like, some might go on loan, some of the younger ones, the 16-year-olds will probably stay in the academy team. So I think it'd be interesting to see how it looks next season. Like I said, again, I'm not hugely clear on the details of how it's going to look, but I know there are some changes being made to how the academy leagues are being structured.
As far as, I just want to add a little thing on that. As far as I know, there was talk that it's going to be a under 19s. So whether it goes 16, 19, or whether they just mirror it like the men, to be honest, because I don't know what the men does. I think the men's go 18s, 21s, 18s, 23s, or something like that. That's what I'd like to see. I think they do need more steps. I think that is, well, it's something since I've started watching it saying they need more steps. It's not enough for me, in my opinion. And then it's good that the money thing coming in, because I think as well, these girls need to be paid, in my opinion, as well. I think when you get to 18, you need to, and we see the 18s boys, they get paid. You see the under 23s, they'll be on contract. Charlie McNeil or whatever, he'll be getting paid something. I think that's why I'm saying about, broadcasting it, getting it out there, sponsors, all this kind of stuff. I get you don't want someone to come and poach your players, but, maybe with this kind of protection now, we might see that. We might see more games broadcast. Because maybe that is the case. They don't want people poaching them. I mean, we had a player poached last year, so it's not just people, us coming and poaching Sheffield, or, City coming and poaching Sheffield and saying one of our own. No, they're not your own, mate. It's your own. Poppy's our own because she's been there since 5 years old. Kira Walsh ain't City's own because they robbed her from Blackburn. Yeah? So don't talk to me about academy and, Man City academy best. Look at all these liner. No, they're not your players, mate. Ellie Roebuck came from Sheffield, not Man City. Please.
Rich, just finish off with you regarding the actual match. I know that you did mention a couple of good points for Birmingham just before we went on air. Just what were your thoughts on Birmingham's academy team? Because looking at the league table, they're not doing that great, but to get to the league final, they must have done really well. Was you pleasantly surprised with what you saw with Birmingham at all?
Yeah, it's hard for me to judge because, like I said, I've got nothing to really compare them to. I haven't seen them before, so I think, like Nat says, I'd imagine it was probably the same for both teams in terms of neither were really at their best, and that's to be expected. Like, it's a cup final, it's brand new for them. It's a big occasion. It's St George's Park. There was a lot of people in the stands, and I don't think you're going to get the best out of young players in that kind of situation, but it'll be good for them to grow because, if they go and play at the top level, they're going to play in cup finals and big games. So, yeah, I thought Birmingham was there. I thought Delphi Cole up front was very good. I thought she was the liveliest player for them. She caused United some problems. There was one quite early on, actually, where she's gone around the goalkeeper. She was quite honest because I think there was some contact and she stayed up, and that would have been interesting because Man United didn't have a sub-goalkeeper. But yeah, I mean, she hit the bar second half and she did look lively. I can understand why she was in the first team at the weekend. I think she's only 16, so and for if Birmingham go down, they might be able to lean on that. Bristol did that a little bit this year. They lent on a few of their academy players in the Championship, and if Birmingham do get relegated, the one saving grace might be that they've got some talented players come through that might be ready to play in the Championship if they've got some sort of more senior players alongside them.
Yeah, so we'll move on there. We'll move on to a message that Rich sent me a couple of weeks ago where he says, John, I think we should talk a little bit about this. So we had a good show a couple of weeks ago. I think Reese might have been on that show as well, talking about media bias, and I think it's really important. I do, and Natalie mentioned at the start of this show, you know, we've just won the Academy Cup, top of league. Let's see what the media's do about this now, or will they just focus on City and Chelsea, the usual suspects. But Rich, thanks for bringing this subject up. I just want to first of all, I was going to throw out a question for you that's coming to me, and I think we discussed it a little bit on this show before. And then Rich, I'll just let you speak, and we can just bounce off each other. It's a difficult question, so I was going to jump straight in there, Rich. But there's a lot of fans who think that some journalists, and certainly not yourself, are so comfortable with their job and the relationships that they've got with with the managers and the clubs that they don't want to ask the serious questions because they don't want to kind of lose their spot in that press conference or lose that good relationship. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you see that happening? I'm not saying does it involve you or just in general.
Yeah, I mean, I can only really speak for myself. I think I said it the last time that actually I felt more comfortable criticizing people that I do know.
Yeah.
Like, whether that's the same for others, I don't know. And I don't think people do. I mean, I know my colleagues quite well. I've known a lot of them for a long time, and they've never said that to me. We'd never got that impression in terms of a conversation, and it shouldn't be like that because at the end of the day, that's not on us. If a club wants to restrict our access because we ask a tough question, it's not really our that is part of the job, and I'm sure tonight after West Ham Chelsea, there'll be some media on, asking some tough questions about Chelsea to Emma Hayes. And, look, Emma Hayes might not be the right person to ask. It's probably a little bit unfair on her as it is with Thomas Tuchel, but I'm sure they'll get asked. I know Emma got asked about it a lot before the Conti Cup final, obviously with what's going on with the club at the moment. So, no, I don't think it is. I think there's a way of, you got to be sort of subtle about it. Sometimes you can't just steam in and you have to phrase things the right way, and because you want to get an answer at the end of the day. You ever ask a question, you want to get a good answer. That's the whole point of doing it. So
yeah,
it's difficult. I mean, look, it's not. That's why we call them hard questions, because they're not easy to ask. But and I've been there with certain. I mean, in women's football, you're never too far away from a big story, and unfortunately, too many negative ones over the years. And I covered England when the whole Mark Sampson situation was going on, and I sat in a lot of uncomfortable press conferences, and it's not nice. Like, it's not what you want. But no, again, I can only speak for myself. I don't get the feeling that people don't want to ask questions because of their access. I think that's not on us at the end of the day. If clubs are fair about it, then if they want to restrict access, they can. There's not a lot we can do about it. But I've never. It's never an issue I've come across, but that's just my perspective on it.
And just go on that.
I just want to touch on. I've just seen we just talked about Emma Hayes, and apparently she was asked things, and apparently she says, "Oh, we've already signed people," but they ain't signed no one now. It's over, mate. But in terms of sort of tough questions, I don't think they dodge it. I just think it was never important before. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I just mean it like, I remember when we first came in and people used to ask Casey questions about, talk to me about this England friendly coming up, and talk to me about you and Megan, and you've got 2 kids. And I think I used to sit and think, you've gone into it, and it's the same with men's team, don't get it wrong, but you've got a chance to ask questions, and you've asked Casey about her kids. Yeah? You've gone into a press conference about, bearing in mind, yeah, it might not have been whatever, but, it's like, we've got injuries, we've got this, we've got fighting for top 4, and you're asking her about an England friendly. Who gives a shit? Not trying to be funny. I don't want to hear the Man United manager talk about an England friendly. I don't care. I know that she's an England legend and all this kind of shit, but who gives a shit? Yeah, in reality, you're at Manchester United press conference. Ask questions about Manchester United. And I feel like I think that I've sort of said it on this show and other shows and everywhere, with the change in sort of fans, and I think we said it, didn't we, John? I can't remember if it was this show with Tom, and I said fans need to do more, fans need to read it, fans need to tweet it, fans need to speak about it. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot now. So, we speak to Rich, we say, you're going on this, want to know about this. I've seen Molly saying, I'm doing something because I've seen people writing about this. Emma, always, blah, 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 blah. What do you want to know, kind of thing. Tom, oh, your fans are saying this. That's what we're seeing more of now. And I think that's through fans speaking to each other, speaking amongst each other. Social media is blowing up a bit more. But actually going to the journalists and saying, what are you doing? You're asking Casey about playing whatever in a minute, and you're asking her about her and a missus. No one cares. And I think we moved away from that kind of, I don't even know what that is, childish meant, kind of questions to real. And then maybe they were childish because maybe that's what would sell. People want to know about who's dating who. I don't give a shit. I want to know about what my team's doing. And I think that we're getting that professionalism come through more now. And they're not asking questions about, I still see it now and then. I see people writing about so-and-so's makeup, and I'm thinking to myself, have I got time? Do I care? Asking, oh, your eyelashes were on fleek. I don't give a shit, mate. You won't ask Marcus Rashford about his style. So don't come on a press conference about this big game to talk about bullshit. And I feel like that's slowly going out of the game, which is better.
Do you want to come in on that one, Rich? Because I do want to kind of ask you, basically how hard is your job? Because you do seem to kind of get, as Natalie said, there's a few fans now that come together, and I'm sure we all contact you and other journalists saying, we want these type of questions. Is it that easy? Is it that easy, or do you ever feel uncomfortable asking the kind of questions that we want to hear?
No, I'm not going to start sitting here and saying like we've got the hardest job in the world. Like it's a hard job, but most jobs are hard. Like it's still a privilege to do it. Like we are incredibly. We've worked hard to get where we are, but we're still incredibly privileged to have the kind of access and go to the, particularly the last couple of years with COVID, that we've still been able to go to games when fans couldn't. So I'm not going to sit here and be all, woe is me and say it's the hardest job in the world. It isn't. I think it's interesting what Nat said, like, because from my point of view, I agree. Like, I'm not interested in speaking to players about, like, if I'm doing like a big feature on a certain player and I'm speaking to them for like an hour and you're getting a little bit of background on, their family and their history and, their brothers and sisters, that's a little bit different. In a press conference, it's not something I'd ask, but that's because it's not relevant to me or to my outlet or to my editor. I can't think of specific examples because I've sat in God knows how many press conferences over the years, but if you're on a call maybe from like a lifestyle magazine, or something like that, family and children and, how, we've seen a lot of them over the years, and I think they are being phased out a little bit now because it's kind of been done to death. But you do see a lot of interviews with people about, how do you raise your kids and be a football manager at the same time or be a football player at the same time. And like, that's not something I'd ask because, again, it's not relevant to me, but I can understand why some outlets would. And some people will care about that. And then you've got fans like Nat who just want the football, who don't care about it. And that's fine. Like, there's never a one-size-fits-all thing. And that's the great thing about the media is, me and Emma and Molly or Susie or whoever will go in and ask a certain set of questions. Someone else will go in with a different kind of... if we all went in and we all wanted to ask the same question, it'd be quite boring and the press conference would be over quite quickly. So...
Do you all, Rich, on that very quickly, do you all speak to each other then, like before you go to this press conference and kind of say, well, I'm going to cover this, or can I cover this and you cover this, or... because
yeah, generally, we've got a WhatsApp group, like, I think there's about 25, 30 people in there. So yeah, like, there's press conferences now nearly every day. I'm very rarely on them because it's not relevant to my job, but there's never a day goes by where there's not an Emma Hayes press conference or a Matt Skinner or a Gareth Taylor or Jonas, Lydia Bedford, somebody. So yeah, it's like every single day, and yeah, they do, they'll say, I'm going to talk about it. And everyone goes in with a different agenda and a different story to come out with, and they ask their question. Someone will go in and say, well, I want team news. Someone else will go in and say, well, I'm writing a profile on a specific player, so I'm going to ask about this player. Someone might go in and say, well, I'm writing about working mums in women's football, and that, like I said, happens less and less, but still happens from time to time. So yeah, I mean, look, the Conti Cup last week, I wasn't on it, but I was in the WhatsApp group looking at what people were saying, and it was a major cup final, and I think there was like one question on the file because it was just Russia, Abramovich and that's that's not for me because I'm not a news writer, but I appreciate that the people that work for newspapers and for Sky Sports and for BBC, it's about current news, and that is the biggest news story in the world right now, and I can understand why they would want to ask Emma Hayes about it, and why it would dominate over a cup final. Whether that's right or wrong, people have their different views, but that's sort of the way news works, really.
Yeah, I want to say that's right because, well, yeah, we all know, and now look at them. So you got to ask. But just in terms of this kind of thing, and I've seen it, and I've seen a few. I don't know where they're from. Maybe it's more social media aspect, but I see people going, "Oh, this one and this one, and they're this," and I'm thinking, you wouldn't be asked. I do see, like you say, Times, fashion, and I've seen them interview Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and they're talking about his fashion. That's fine, but that's an hour sit down, and that's a full 2-page spread. But then I'm seeing other people writing for supposedly big football, football-based, platforms, and the men's side would never ask that, but then the women's, what nail varnish do you use? And I'm just thinking, we need to get away from that. We need to just get away from it, period. Like I said, if you're fashion bloggers, you can write a full piece. But there seems to be these WOSO journalists who just want to talk about eyelashes and makeup and it's your mate, Rich, but I'm not going to start naming names, but I know you know them. They're on TalkSport as well, so I know you know them. And they just want to write about makeup and who's dating who, and I'm thinking, like you say, privileged position, and that's what you're writing about, and it's just ridiculous, to be honest. But there you go. That's why I don't buy that said outlet, because if you read their content on the men, it's shit hot. It's always there. Then I looked at International Women's Day when there actually was content, and nothing. And said outlets.
I mean, that at the end of the day, like that is the way. I mean, look, I agree. It's not something I would write about, but I'm not in control of what everyone does and what people's interests are. But if you don't like it, don't read it, because if people don't read it, I mean, I wouldn't, but I feel like if it keeps getting commissioned, there must be some people out there reading it, because trust me, if an editor, especially at a big outlet, whether it's a newspaper, a magazine, whatever, that's putting a lot of money into it, if people are not reading articles that they're paying to put out there, they'd stop putting them out there. So, if people don't like the content we put out, don't read it, because then it will stop happening. And the stuff that does get read will happen more and more often.
I think that's women's football in general changing over the last 3 or 4 years. So maybe like 3 years ago, maybe some fans would want to read about that and that lovey-dovey kind of, like, oh, she smiles at me, she's my mate, we have our selfies together, all this kind of stuff. You want to kind of get, like, arguably too close, you got to remember that these are just players that we support, and obviously some people want a bit more of a relationship face-to-face, whereas, say, Nat is giving this example right now, she just wants football information, and I think that's kind of the way it's kind of going now. We've got the men's supporters coming across of the men's team. It's slightly changing, and maybe that's why we want to go on that. Yeah,
and I think Skinner actually said something about it today. He said to my actual good friend, who I'm seeing a lot more on press conferences, he's called Jamie. Go and give him a follow. Jamie Spencer from Full 90. from 90 Minutes Football. Definitely follow him. I know Rich is on with us, but he asked Skinner about his perceptions of the WSL since coming back this season. And he says he's loved it. He likes to be in it, but he says there's more challenges now. We're more visible. And this is something I do agree with. Man United is a key part in pushing that. And I just want to sort of bring it back to the cup final as well. Man United need to do more for showing these, 21s. Like I said, I talked about all the people that were watching up and down the country, around the world, not just up and down the country. And, I look at someone like Safia Middleton Patel, Indian, and a lot of Indian fans, and it means so much to them because, it's not a Western culture, it's a different culture. And you look at people like Bunny Shaw, look at African players, seeing a woman play, it's just going to change the perception of that. So they're talking about representing and all that kind of thing. I saw Catherine Batt talking about when the Super League did that message and there's no black players, things like that. That's what I want to see journalists talking about, not just foolishness that this girl talks about. But anyway, Skinner said, every manager must be finding it challenging. You bring in more investments, more people are coming to watch. There's more situations that you have to prepare for, more pressure. And this is how the job's changed since just him going away. How many years is he away? 2-3 years. I think even if I look at the way we've changed, the way our support has changed, what we demand. I know Rich says, someone posted, I think it was Lanzell, would you rather have the devs or have top? No, I want both. There's no kind of one or the other. You've got to promote youth and get Champions League. And if he can't handle that, then bye. You know what I'm saying? You're the manager. You've got to do it. Do both. And I think that's how it's changed. I think there's more pressure. You're looking at this title race, pressure on Emma Hayes to ask questions, but there's pressure on her to win as well. And this is it. It's football now. It's not, like you say, lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy, lionesses. That shit's minor compared to where it is. Lioness is still major, but... even I look back at 2019 and the World Cup and, at least we tried. And I think to myself, well, you're the same person, Phil Neville, who came out and said third place is a failure and you got fourth. So what's that then? And I found that not enough people questioned him on that because he says, if I don't get to the final, it's a failure. So I don't understand how people didn't follow up to say, so you failed, Phil. You said on this date, it's the failure. My first question would be in there, boom, so you failed. What have you got to say for yourself? But everyone knows he was a shit manager anyway. But yeah, sorry I'm being aggressive tonight.
I just want to finish the show asking Rich then. So if we were all agreeing that women's football is changing, does journalism need to change? Is it already changing? What needs to change in regards to that, Rich? Where can you kind of see, you and your colleagues going, or where do they need to go?
Yeah, I think it is changing. I think naturally it just changes as the sport changes. Like you have to adapt. It's not really changed for me because I've been freelance. I've always kind of had that freedom to do what I want anyway, which is why I can't really sort of put it from a newspaper point of view. But it will as the game gets bigger and there is more and more demand. And you've seen that change, because 4 or 5 years ago, the Times, the Guardian, the Telegraph, the Athletic, they didn't have women's football writers. Now they've all got at least one. They've all got at least one dedicated women's football writer. So that's changed. That's been a huge change. Because when I came into it, there wasn't a Molly, there wasn't a Susie, there wasn't a Katie. There wasn't an Emma. There was only a handful of people. Who all sort of did it for free or did it freelance. So that's changed massively, and it needs to keep changing because there's a lot for one person to do. When there's 6 games a weekend in the WSL, 6 games in the Championship, and when you've got major tournaments and you've got 3-4 games a day, and you've only got one writer, you don't need me to do the maths in terms of how difficult that is. I think my frustration is, and I don't know why, whether it's a perception over from the men's game, I don't know, but in the WSL particularly, it's becoming harder. It's becoming harder and harder to... And look, we've got no divine right to have access to anything. If a club doesn't want to give us access to something, they don't have to. But I mean, the NWSL starting next week, the Challenge Cup, and I emailed 5 NWSL clubs last week to try and set various interviews up, and I've already done 2 of them today. I've got another one tomorrow, and then I've got 2 more next week with the 2 new clubs, San Diego and Angel City, and it couldn't have been easier. I mean, one club emailed me back in 20 minutes, said, right, this time, this day, set a Zoom call up, we'll sort it out. And this is with like a big name player. There's a club in Germany that I'm doing a feature with at the moment, a big German club, like one of the Champions League German clubs. And I emailed them last month and said, look, I want to do a piece on the club. Can I speak to a couple of players and the manager? And they actually emailed me back and said, you can have the players, you can have the manager. You can also have, if you want, you can have our head of women's football and our sporting director. And I didn't even ask for them. And they offered me that. That doesn't happen in the WSL. It just doesn't at the moment. You really have to fight for everything. There's a couple of clubs that are still good. And I'll be open. Man City are one of them. In terms of, if you go to Man City and say, I want to do this, generally they'll say yes. And that's maybe why you see a lot of Man City coverage, because other clubs turn those requests down. I saw United fans a few weeks ago when Molly did a piece on their academy talking to Jane Ludlow and Gavin Makel, their sporting director. That will have happened because Manchester City allowed it to happen. We can't just walk into a club and just interview somebody. You have to do it with permission. And if you're not seeing a lot of coverage on the club you support, it might not always be because we don't want to. It's because we're not being allowed to, So, again, we've no divine right. If a club doesn't want to do something for any reason, that's up to them. I think the players don't mind doing it. When we do media with players, it's generally okay. Some are better at it than others. Some enjoy it more than others, but there's not really any resistance. You feel the resistance comes from the clubs. And I mean, how easy it's been for me to set so many things up in the space of a few days in America is incredible. For a German club that I've never worked with before to come and say, you can have what you want plus more. But in England, it is just...
But this is where I think you need to call it out then. And I think there's times where journalists have said to me, oh, but I don't want to say. Say it, tweet it out. I don't understand why we're so scared. And this is what, as well, everyone knows Man United don't want media, whether that's because of, what the way it was reported in the summer. That didn't help anyone. So I think they're resistant there. And I know they were always resistant, but I think that's added extra resistant in the way that was reported. I think, maybe it comes with quality of press. Yeah, I do agree. But as well, I think it comes, I don't know, how was I going to say? I don't know. I think they need to see it. They need to see and think. Like, for example, Germany, no one watches it. Obviously, people watch it, but they haven't got the coverage like it is here. They know that people are going to turn up no matter what kind of thing, here, I think, more so than in Germany. Like, this is probably the most watched league. I'm not sure about NWSL, but I think WSL is probably, because they've got the TV deal and they've got deals all around, probably the most watched league. I'm not sure about money coming in for other leagues. So they got like a Barclays. And I think that's what it is. And it's coming back that kind of, we're better than you. But then I think they need to get called out and told, listen, it's not good enough. I've tried to do this piece. I know our journalists who tried to do a piece on one of our players during lockdown. It was just told straight up, we don't do it, period. That's it. And I think all this kind of, this is where the men's, they need to get out of that. Yeah, totally. I agree with you. And, but I think it is just maybe a general distrust of the press. And I feel like when stories are reported, they're sort of, like I say about in the summer, skewed a certain way to sort of, I don't know. Yeah. We've talked about the summer articles and the way they were written and what was said, and then they turn around and say, oh, can I interview your player? We're going to be told one thing in a way. I'm not saying they shouldn't report it, because then I know that when I talk about someone, Emma, she has, I don't know, I'd say, I wouldn't say, I know she would say it wasn't great, but I wouldn't say, I'd say she probably got one of the best relationships with United. I don't know about other people. And obviously, I'm just saying what I see, because she does put a lot of United content out, and she does talk a lot about United and transfers and this and that, and things that they don't like. I remember they didn't like that I knew we were signing certain players, but it's life, you know? And I think they're slowly realising that now. But yeah, the summer wouldn't have helped anyone. And I'm not saying that they didn't need to get called out. Of course they did. But then some journalists went too far. And maybe that's it.
I agree. Like, I think it is a mistrust, but whether it's a correctly placed mistrust or not, I'm not sure. I think there isn't, particularly with the big clubs that have come into it recently. I think there probably is that attitude that they've come over from the men's game, and I think certainly in the men's game there's a mistrust. Like, but I don't think it's reached that point in the women's. I think, don't get me wrong, you know, there might be a story every now and again that's not true, whether that's intentionally or not. Personally, I don't think a journalist, particularly in the women's game, ever goes out intentionally to write a non-factual article, because you've got absolutely nothing to gain from it. But I think, you know, if a club doesn't like what someone's written, that's fine. And I've had that in the past where a club hasn't liked something I've said. So, you know, don't give that journalist access for a while, but don't punish everybody else. Do you know what I mean? And some clubs, yeah, I don't know. You know, I mean, in NWSL, you know, they get as much coverage as probably any country in the world when it comes to women's soccer, and they're not resistant to it. You know, they're very open with it, you know, and like I said, I've had no issues. I've sorted 5 interviews out this week. I don't think I've sorted 5 interviews out in the WSL in the last 12 months. So, you know, I don't know. I wish there was more dialogue. I really do, because, you know, we don't want to stitch people up. You know, we want to talk about the sport. You know, we want to talk to the players, and we want to, you know, I mean, it was interesting because a couple of years ago I went to a marketing day at Wembley in my role with Sheffield United, and this was like 2019, and it was the first one that I'd been to, and I think it was the last that I did face to face, because obviously COVID came around shortly after that. But it was actually really interesting because there was a media panel. So a couple of, like, Kieran, when Kieran was still a journalist, came in. Jackie Oatley came in. I think Tony Layton came in, and one other maybe, I can't remember. And they did like a panel with the clubs, and like every club had a representative there, either like their media officer, marketing officer, whatever. And we put everyone, like both sides, put across, you know, the media said, look, this is what we need, or this is what we think, and you know, there was a bit of back and forth, and the club said, well, this is why we don't do this, or this is why we do this. And I kind of thought like that was the start of a more open dialogue, and then it hasn't really changed. Look, it's not a one size fits all. Some clubs are still very good, but it is getting harder and harder. And I think that was naturally going to happen. Like when I got involved 10 years ago, and there was like 2 or 3 journalists, you could do whatever you wanted. You know, it was pretty. Some clubs didn't have media officers. You could just message a player directly and say, do you want to do an interview? You know, and it was never going to stay that way. You know, every club now has a press officer and a media officer. And, you know, I play that role at Sheffield United as well. So, you know, I've been on both sides of it. But, yeah, I mean, look, I'd love to sit down with the club and say, look, why? You know, what's the issue? Because it's not an issue in America. It's not an issue in Germany. It's not an issue in France or Spain. You know, I'm working with a Spanish club at the moment on something, and it's just so much easier. And I just would like to know why.
What I think that needs to happen then, and I know this will be, and it's the same with fans. Why don't you speak to your fans? I know clubs that are resistant to. I mean, we've got John there in the comments saying things. We've not had Man United players on, but we've had other players. But that's by the by. But you know, I think there needs to be some kind of, and there's all right sort of waiting for it to happen and hoping it happens and keep messaging and keep not getting replies. But there needs to be some kind of, whether it's the FA, Premier League, whoever, I don't care. Because we see it in the Premier League, every manager has to do a press conference. There's no kind of no or yes or no now. We see in the WSL they're actually doing them, but they're doing them off their own back. You know what I mean? No one's sort of making them do it, if you get what I mean. I think they've just realised through COVID that it's the best thing to do, and obviously it's continued. But I think there needs to be some kind of guidelines. I don't know what is in the Premier League. I don't know what it is on men's football. But you're telling me that there's not some kind of, you know, if you went to a club saying, I want to interview this, there's some kind of structure to it, you know, because we do see Man United men's getting interviewed, so it's not like the girls can't get interviewed, you know. So, you know, we've seen them all put up for Sky because Sky are bringing the money. So we need to. I don't know what the deal is in the men's side. I don't know. You probably know better than me, but I think there needs to be some kind of, you have to do it. There's no, I think we've had enough of this clubs dictating, like you say, some clubs are good, some clubs aren't. Some clubs are good at talking to the fans, some clubs aren't. But in the Premier League, there's a rule that says you have to have 3 meetings with your fan group, period. That's the rule, you know? And I feel like these things need to start getting dictated because, like you say, in England, they'll just do what you want. If you let a club do what you want, they're going to do what they want, you know? But then I don't even, but they don't do content we want anyway. I don't want to hear MUTV all the time. I want to hear proper, real, you know, when I watched Skinner's MUTV, they actually made me mad. When I know that Emma's been there and asked the good questions. Even when you went, Rich, you asked better questions than MUTV could ever ask. But then I know that that's coming. So I don't know you'll know more than me, Rich. What's the deal with the men's, you know, compared to the women's? Are there rules and structures in place? And it's time to just let clubs know this is it. Bang.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, if I'm being honest, because I don't really do the men's stuff. I mean, there's people like Molly now are starting to do more men's football stuff, so someone like her might be a good person to ask. I just think it's a shame, like, because fans want content, you know, like, you know, United fans particularly want content, but a lot of fans want content, and that's our job at the end of the day. And you know, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and be all, you know, privileged and say we absolutely should have this and should have that. You know, we've got no right to anything. And if we've made mistakes or we've done things they don't like, you know, they've got a right to you know, take that back. So, but there's so much good content as well. And look, it's the way of the world. People focus on the bad stuff. If someone writes a bad article or a bad opinion or something like that, they get, you know, some criticism, but there's a lot of good stuff, you know, and I'm not just talking about me. I'm not going to sit, but you know, Molly, Susie, Katie, everyone, you know, Emma, they're brilliant at their jobs, you know. And when they do interviews, they're great. And you know, when I've done interviews over the year, you know, you really get into people's stories and you know who they are, and you know, I think that's what people want. And you know, there was a comment there, you know, I think that rings quite true about, you know, controlling. And I think now in-house media on men's and women's sides becoming bigger. You know, the bigger teams, they've got their in-house channels, and at the end of the day, you know, and I'll use Man United as an example, but there's plenty of other clubs. But if I email Man United and say, you know, let me have a half an hour sit down with Mark, you know, but they can just go and do that themselves and put it on MUTV or put it on the Man United website, you know, and they can control it and they can do that. And don't get me wrong, I do that at Sheffield United. We do match previews with our players or our manager every week, but you know, I'm still happy for other people to speak to them if they want to. I mean, like, it's different with us. We don't get anywhere near the same amount of attention, but I've generally never turned down a media request, you know, from if a player wants to do it. If a player doesn't, that's a different matter. You know, I'm not going to make a player do an interview, but if they want to do it and a journalist asks, you know, I'll do it. And sometimes I actually go to journalists because obviously I know a lot of them and I know who to trust, and I say, look, we've got this story or we've got that story, do you want to come and speak to her, you know, or do you want to come speak to the manager? And again, it's slightly different, you know, we're looking for a bit of attention because we don't get a huge amount. The top clubs get it every day. So I don't know, you know, we'd like to have more discourse, and we do, you know, and what you guys don't see is, you know, we do work hard for that. You know, the Football Writers Association now has, and for a few years has had its own little women's football division, and we all have our say on you know, issues in the media and what we think we need more of or what we want more of. And you know, we send letters, we send emails, you know, as a group to clubs, yeah, and we have that back and forth, you know. And I think that's positive to have, you know, because we want to keep providing content. It's our job at the end of the day, but not just for us, but obviously for the fans. So hopefully it can move forward. Hopefully it doesn't get more difficult, but it's hard to understand why it's so much harder in the league you actually cover day in, day out than it seems to be in any other league. Because, you know, I emailed these clubs in America and thought it'd be tricky. That's why I emailed so many, because you think, oh, maybe a couple, you know, will stick and you'll get a couple turned down. Yeah. Everyone said yes. So you will probably be seeing a lot of NWSL content from me in the next few weeks and not a lot of WSL stuff. So but that's because they've all said yes. You know, they're all happy for the interviews to go out and for the interviews to be done. I mean, I did 2 of them today, and they were great. You know, the players were happy. They enjoyed it. You know, we had a good chat. Nothing sinister. Nothing's going to get twisted. You know, it was just back and forth. You know, and that's what an interview should be at the end of the day. You know, when it's just a bit of a chit chat about previewing the season. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, you know, clubs have got every right to do what they want. They can control what they want. That's not a problem. But it'd be nice to sort of have a bit more of the discussion about how we can work together, because I think we can be beneficial for each other. And at the end of the day, it's for you guys, it's for the fans. You know, what we do is for the fans, what the clubs do is for the fans, and we shouldn't be trying to deny each other that. You know, we shouldn't be trying to mess the clubs around. The clubs shouldn't be trying to, you know, we're trying to, I know we keep saying it and I hate saying it, but we are still trying to grow this sport. This sport is still growing, like day in, day out. It's still so young. So yeah, hopefully it stays, you know, relatively positive, and we can still keep. Look, the clubs, you know, we asked for more press conferences. That was something we asked a lot of because fans wanted it. You know, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, there was hardly any press conferences. Now, pretty much every club nearly has a press conference every single week. You know, whether that's United, City, Chelsea, Arsenal, whoever. Yeah. And you guys see that, you know, because Emma and Asif and Catherine, etc., they all post the quotes every Thursday and Friday. And that was something we pushed for, and that was something that the clubs were, to be fair, receptive to. You know, so we've moved that forward, and they're the kind of things we work on behind the scenes to try and improve it. But yeah, you know, it'd just be nice if still, you know, if you go to a club with a request and say, look, I just like 10 minutes even, you know, 10, 15 minutes with this player. It's not a huge amount to ask, but, you know, it'd just be nice to even know if it's not going to happen, you know, why not? You know, is there something we need to change? Is there something that we can do differently or you can do differently? Because, you know, it's not about us at the end of the day. It's about the game and the supporters. So, you know, that's just been my kind of frustration. And it's been a frustration for a lot of people. Like, it's something we're speaking about a lot at the minute, and how we can kind of improve things in terms of the media and keep that relationship good and not let it go like it has in the men's. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Guys, thank you very much. I know that the show's gone on a little bit longer than usual, but Nat, I know you need to shoot off as well. But Rich, thank you very much for coming on. Real good show tonight. We're gonna go, but thank you, Rich. Stick around, and I'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys.